Welcome to Story Arcs Podcast. Today we are going to cover Maximum Carnage event. It is 14 issues. It's a lot. And it covers 4 different Spider-Man comics. So we have Spider-Man Unlimited, Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, and Web of Spider-Man, I believe, were the ones that were covered through the event. So the writers on this one are Tom DeFalco, J.M. DeMattis, um, Terry Cavanaugh, and David Michelini. I believe is how you say it, Michelini. And that is a lot of writers, and I think that is something that we will kind of touch on today as we go through. So today we chose Maximum Carnage because of Venom 2 coming out this week. It's going to be a pretty big movie. I don't know if it's 100% going to have any direct influence, but this is the first appearance of Shriek, who I know is going to be in the Venom 2 movie, and it's also one of the biggest arcs for Carnage that you see kind of in his early time. And it's, again, we'll cover this a little bit more. It's one of the first bits where we see Venom as a true anti-hero as opposed to a full villain, and that's kind of the space that he still occupies today and in the movies as well. All right, you got anything, Gavin, before we get into the summary?
No, I think you covered it well. Yeah, I'm ready to get right into, kind of reflections of it.
All right, well, let's dive into Maximum Carnage. So my brief summary, essentially, we start out with Carnage breaks out of prison. It has been established in the past Carnage storyline that he's lost the symbiote, but then it turns out that it's in his bloodstream, and we won't get mired in the details because, let's be honest, the comic doesn't get mired in the details there. And then he meets Shriek. They get together. They come up with they amass a family of villains and just sow chaos throughout the New York City. And we fight heroes, and then we do some other stuff, and then we fight heroes, and then we do some other stuff, fight heroes, and it's a kind of a fun, just bouncing back and forth. There's not a
Yep.
whole lot to it. There is not nearly the substance that we saw in our Daredevil episode or in the Marvels episode. So
Yes. Indeed, overall, it was pretty straightforward, like you're saying. So, what I mean? I think without, doing any spoilers, that does give really a good summary of it. And, I can jump in with because some of our likes and dislikes, like, was overall, right, Carnage, what I liked about it, he's just a good villain overall. He's, just sowing chaos. You can't satisfy any demands. He doesn't want anything other than just the, death of people and just general chaos. He makes it, yeah, very specific that he doesn't have a target. You can't go in knowing who you're gonna kill. It needs to be uncalculated. That's kind of a part of his whole vibe. So, yeah, he's a good villain. I like that. Um,
yeah, it's a pretty
yeah,
basic story. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. He's very much just boom, and Shriek is just the whole time just being the enabling female character.
yeah,
The depth is not really here. And that's something that's just going to be continually. We're going to probably not shut up about that as we go through here. So that's my dislikes. Like there's no depth. There's not really much new that we explore. Yeah.
yeah. And I'll just quickly say, I know one of my dislikes I have. It's I mean, we'll talk about the hero mentality in this is a bit annoying for me because of how chaotic and aggressive that Carnage is at being evil, and he's effective, right? And he's killing people, and to yeah, and our heroes are not so much stopping him. So their ineffectiveness and just kind of relying on hope to kind of get rid of him is one of my dislikes about it overall. Yeah, our heroes are ineffective.
Yeah, so I mean, getting into the cultural significance, it's it's very 90s. That is that is how I will continue to describe it as we go through our conversation. It's 90s, but it's I mean, it's good 90s, but it's also bad 90s.
Yeah.
There's a lot of characters. There's some quintessential 90s characters here that are just kind of the stakes are kind of upped, not really for much reason. The themes are pretty simple, and I think we get that big point that you mentioned earlier. Venom Venom as the anti-hero starts to come through here. The late 80s, early 90s, it's the time of the anti-hero. This is parallel to the Nightfall story arc, and Azrael and Batman is happening about the same time that this comes out. This is the height of the anti-hero. That's 90s is all about two things: bright colors and grittiness.
Yep, and it does that well, right? Bringing well, one the common people into that grittiness. You'll see and kind of they talk a bit about whether that's kind of innately in man a bit. Some of that Carnage is showing that bit of chaos. So yeah, that's I think the as much of the cultural significance as they try to go. Again, it's not so deep.
Yeah, we're talking broad strokes here, folks. It is about as broad as you're gonna get. It's almost like after school special level. Just don't do bad things for no reason.
Yep.
Through through my lens, I mean, when you're looking at this, I mean, this is what we were kind of taught. I feel like as kids, like this is what you got from again, 90s after school specials, 90s things that was just very simple. There's they tried to make things look more black and white, I feel like, than ever. Um, you want to avoid nihilism, which is of course ironic because I feel like now the 90s kids generation has embraced nihilism quite a bit in in some different forms. And that's really the only lens that I have is just that I mean this is what pop culture was when I grew up until we got to kind of the 2000s and started worrying about Y2K and that kind of stuff before a little bit before that. But
For
I
sure.
mean,
Yeah, and I guess I have to say I don't know if I yeah had a different angle at this. I was just thinking like what character I kind of saw my I would see myself approaching the story through their lens that way. And I know Venom was just a character I vibe with the most, just like wanting to how he wanted to tackle the problems of the that the heroes were facing. So I just think he just had the most realistic approach to it, and I vibe with his just needing to get rid of Carnage at whatever means possible. That was the realistic way to go about it.
yeah, I kind of wonder. The movie has definitely played up more of the modern interpretation of Venom and Eddie kind of having like a conversation between themselves. That has not happened yet in the comics of this era. Like
Mm,
he's maybe done a little. I don't think that Venom's had. I can't remember when Venom really gets like an actual voice, um, separate from Eddie's. But I do wonder how that they're not going to directly adapt this storyline for sure. I think this is going to be more just the movie's going to be more just straight Venom versus Carnage, with Shriek kind of as a extra foil there. But there's not there's not a Spider-Man character in Venom, so I almost wonder if Eddie's going to be kind of one or the other. Is Eddie going to be trying to solve it a different way than Venom? Maybe we
Right.
see it a little bit in that. Like I honestly, I think the movie's going to be. I've heard some rumblings. I think the movie might actually end up being better than this comic book story, which is not something that I would
Right.
say
I'm
right
thinking
from the jump.
when just off the top of my head, I feel like less characters overall, which I feel like the movie will have will make it easier to digest for a lot of people because this was just had so many people just coming in every other every quarter of a issue to throw you off and like make you try to remember what was going on. So I have a feeling the movie being able to hone in on each into the Venom character and Carnage character like a lot heavier will help it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is our next section usually is we talk about connections to classic lit. I mean, this doesn't really have connections to classic lit that I've seen. Like, there's no direct parallels here to the story. It's very, again, very basic story, but the classic lit that I think it does connect to is, I mean, it's of its time in the fact that, man, you pull a lot of characters. There's a lot of characters around, and this is kind of when Marvel starts to realize, oh, we got all these characters. Let's throw this character in here. He's not in the comic right now. He's not doing anything right now. Let's put him in this story. Um, Web of Spider-Man, I think is kind of the one of the books at the time that does that a lot. And I think you also get, again, you just get kind of the very basic idea of just, more is better. And it's, again, a, almost like a 90s trope. Just, put some more in here. Like, it's gonna end up being better. And I think at this point, it just nobody's fleshed out. So, well, let's get to what the hell. So for me, the weirdest thing that stuck out that bothered me the most in this book was Shriek and her desire to create a family with just whatever bad guy they came across. Um, the motivations of Shriek are very weird. She just like immediately decides she wants to be with Carnage and did her. I mean, this is like when you. I'm going to get into DC a little bit here. Harley Quinn, when she's written poorly and she's just written as like Joker's girlfriend, like that's the level that we see here from Shriek. Like, she just is into this guy because he wants to kill everybody, and that's kind of her thing too. And so, okay, let's kill everybody then. Um, and the family thing, it just seems like there's just a weird, like, lazy, almost like lazy sexism to it. Like, oh, she's a bad lady. She has uh, issues in her past, and she didn't have a good family, so now she wants to create a family
Yeah.
or something.
Not very
Maybe
deep.
I don't. Yeah, I don't really get into it. So what kind of freaked you out in this story?
So yeah, I know something that definitely threw me off when Captain America came in for the first time. I know there was a scene where like Spider-Man was a fanboy, and it really threw me off. He was like, "Oh, he's here now. Everything's solved." You know what I mean? Now, I forget his exact lines, but it was almost like the bad guys don't stand a chance. You know what I mean? And it really threw me off because it wasn't it didn't seem like it was written as a joke. Anything. Just it really threw me off how much he was fanboying at him being there.
I think it's important to point out this was not would not have been the first time that Spider-Man met Captain America either. Like, they were together in Secret Wars, which takes place over like an extended amount of time. I mean, I don't remember if there was any like changes to like their memory or anything at the end of Secret Wars off the top of my head, but I don't think so. Um, and so, like, he should know Captain America pretty well at that point. And I mean,
And know that his enemies are formidable, and You know what I mean? It's just to think that anyone's just gonna come in and stop Carnage or something that easy is just your mind's not thinking straight. You're it's pipe dreams.
Yeah, and I won't spoil all of the cameos, but
Right.
there's a lot. They just keep showing up. They just keep showing up. So
Yeah.
if you if you want to see how many characters can come in, spend about 3 panels doing something, and then be forgotten about, and then come back a little bit later, like this is a good story for that. Um, let's get to our awards. So here we here we have first up, of course, best character. The For me, they're not very fleshed out, right? So for me, I got to stick with Carnage here. And as we say, the best character is can either be the best written or can be the most noble character. Most of the time, I think we try to keep it best written. In this case, I'm gonna go best written. Like he's the one whose motivations actually are clear and they make sense because Carnage motivations are always just chaos, right? He's a simple character to write. They don't mess him up. This is what he should be most of the time. Don't mess with what works. He's crazy. He's just crazy, and he's a serial killer that now has the power of an alien symbiote and can just tear people to shreds whenever he feels like it. So
Oh yeah. And he was going in, and my character, I mean, obviously his antithesis, my best was Venom for this one because like I said before, I vibe with his motives. I mean, I really wanted to, it made me want to see, like, because he says he's a targeted killer, who else he'd want to kill. Like, yeah, he's not after innocents, he's only killing someone he sees a purpose for. So it just yeah, it vibed with me more and actually got me interested in that character for, like, to see other comics with him in it. So he was definitely my best for this one.
yeah, like we touched on earlier. I mean, this is where he starts to kind of one of the stories where this and the Lethal Protector story that they used for the first movie is really where he starts to kind of come into his own and get more fleshed out as opposed to just being the anti Spider-Man. Um, he kind of comes into his own as a character in this story and eventually becomes a full-on anti-hero. Eventually gets his own series. Eventually becomes the juggernaut of a character, not Marvel's juggernaut, but the juggernaut of a character that is gonna put butts in seats. You can have
Yeah.
a whole movie about. And for Sony, they're basing the whole franchise on Venom. We're gonna see Morbius later next year now, and so yeah, this is
Hmm.
where we start to get that peak Venom starts to come out a little bit, and I think a lot of people this or the animated series is probably the Venom that they remember from when they were a kid. So,
For sure.
uh, who's your worst character? I'll let you go first for worst.
Yep. And so yes, for worst, I went with our main man Spider-Man on this one because, like we talked about before, he he was just an ineffective hero. His plan seemed to be rest up, throw my body at the enemy without any real plan on how to take them down. Just what wasn't coming in with the effective strategies or anything. So and just his whole hope mentality of, yeah, hoping Carnage will be hoped away is he was just not my favorite in this one overall. So I feel like it's gonna be rare that I that I give it to him, our usual hero. So yeah, on me it's Spider-Man for this one.
Yeah, well, and he ends up not facing just Carnage. He faces a lot of bad guys, and he brings a lot of friends to pretty much every fight. Like I don't think there's any fights except
Right.
one of the early ones where he's really by himself. But for
Mm.
me, the worst character, I mean, a lot of them were incomplete. I stuck with Demo Goblin. I think is the one that I'm gonna go with full on. Um, he his motivations are kind of confusing. Like I know we did a research, and it's touched on in the comic, but I know he's a demon from limbo. Has this whole thing about cleansing the sinners and that it's okay to kill, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Especially because I don't think he's from the Christian limbo, or so I don't know where this religious thing comes from. I think he's from the limbo that is referenced in X-Men more often with magic. So I I don't know. It's yeah. And he's not the only one that has some weird confusing motivations. I mean, we I said we
Yeah.
won't spoil too much because the whole point of the podcast is that to let you decide if you want to read it. But
Right.
man, if you can think of a 90s character, there's from Spider-Man or Spider-Man adjacent, there's a decent chance that they might show up here. Because we end up with probably a total of about 25 characters that play a significant
Hmm.
role that uh, throughout this book.
Oh yeah, it's a serious one.
So I'll take wow moment again. The arc of the story is very much it's very much up here most of the time. It's not you're not getting a lot of lows. The dips are it's kind of a this motion, I guess. I don't know if that's even a I don't even know if that's the thing, but we don't get the full traditional story arc, right? It's a
Hmm.
lot of there's some peaks, there's some valleys. There's not really a I don't even know if I could really say there's a full climax to the story. I feel like there's just a lot of minor climaxes.
Hmm.
And so for me, the wow moment, there's the fight scenes are good. This is where they kind of nail it. I feel like is the fight scenes are good. They're well written. The action on the page is good. The art is fairly solid, even though as you noticed at the beginning of the podcast, I didn't mention the artists because there's so many that inked and penciled, and I think we're looking at 20 or 30 uh, across inking, penciling, lettering, colorists. Yeah, it's just so many people. So for me, the best fight scene I thought was the dance club fight scene. So there's a bit of an event that Mary Jane goes to. Turns out Carnage and the bad guys decide to crash it. Everybody shows up. The heroes are kind of arguing the whole time. There's lots of beams falling down, and yeah, it's well drawn, and it's fun. That's the one thing I can say about this storyline that is fairly consistent. Like it is fun even in its silliness sometimes. Even in its shallowness. It's a it's like a '90s action movie, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Steven Seagal as Spider-Man.
Yes, and that's why. Well, the wow moment for me, I know there was a lot of action, but yeah, mine came when I know turning the page, I was surprised. Like basically, a lot of people, because of Carnage's chaos in the city, are understandably stressed. But there's a woman at the top of a building, almost gonna drop her kids off of it, just going, supposedly crazy from the all the chaos that's going on, and Hero has to come in and save them. So it's just very very different. Um, that coming at you off the page because it's a very kind of serious situation, right? It's almost dealing with something like suicide, right? I mean, that's someone
Yeah, a little bit
homicide.
of
You have to be
forced,
pretty broken. Yeah,
a little bit of forced drama. Like Spider-Man is
right.
typically very good at that connecting to like what would how are real people affected by what's going on in these stories. And this, yeah, we didn't touch much on it, but there's a plot point that just kind of comes up, and it's the around Shriek, and that she is like emanating this nihilistic feel.
Yeah,
It's
that
not really,
may be contributing right to that person's
yeah,
motives, but that was a bit earlier that I mentioned it. So yeah, is that going on through the whole thing? It's so loose that you don't really know, right?
yeah, because I think I don't think that's what's going on at the beginning, but then it's hard to kind of it's hard to trace back. Like okay,
Yeah.
is she making Carnage worse? I
Right.
don't
They
know.
feeding into
I
each other somehow.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, they kind of imply that one of the bad guys later on like wouldn't have been doing this if it wasn't for that, but that's a little loose too, and yeah, it's but yeah,
hmm
that's definitely a shocking moment, and I think it's almost shocking to just for that purpose without much of a
Yeah.
real good story behind it, and I think as you mentioned earlier, like who surely something else could have snapped her out of this, could have it wouldn't. Why did it require Spider-Man? Well, oh, my son plays as Spider-Man. Well, my son plays as Spider-Man too. He also plays as Captain America, and he plays as Iron Man, and he plays as Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what else is gonna really snap somebody out of it. It's kind of again, it's a little lazy writing.
hmm
And I'm familiar with a couple of these authors, and it's not usually a hallmark of all of their stuff. So, and this is still a well liked story. We're not here to cover stories that are generally we're not going to cover bad stories. Unless it's for a specific reason.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's a little difficult here. So with that in mind, I'm going to let you do dumbest decision and wrap up, and then I will wrap up awards with my dumbest decision here.
Okay. So yeah, I guess it won't be giving too much of a spoiler, but so yes, with all the clashes between our heroes and villains, when they finally did catch, a reveal, Shriek at some point here, then our hero Spider-Man ties her up classic style, just to a light post with some web around her, and the enemies quickly, easily freed her, and then they need to get her again. And it was just, what's the motivation? She's not guarded. You know what I mean? That's not any kind of secure thing. So it's kind of frustrating as a watcher, right? Because of how hard they work to capture those guys. So that's the dumbest decision for me.
For me, I'm a married man. A lot of the personal strife because Spider-Man, he always does the both sides. He has the personal connects to his superhero life. Pretty much all of his personal strife in this story is just that he doesn't talk things out with his wife for 30 seconds. Like explain why he's running off this time. I know that happens a lot in Spider-Man. He doesn't get a chance to explain a super lot, but there's definitely times in this story that he could take a minute. Like he's not gonna change much by being there a bit earlier because again he gets distracted on the way there. I think after one of their fights. So what was the point of not talking to her if you can't even do that? And of course, this was pre cell phones. I think the modern Spider-Man probably taps on his head and can talk to her and figure that out depending on which suit he's wearing. But
Right. But also
yeah,
again with the
it,
25 characters that were overall, there are other heroes in the story that are handling things at some point. So yeah, to reinforce that.
um. Oh, and he also I remember I think he doesn't explain why he's working with Venom very well either, which is again, yeah, just talk, man. Communication, that's key to relationships. So what we learned, and who are we recommending this for? I don't know that we learned anything. I'm gonna say we didn't learn anything. Did you learn anything? No, nobody learned
Yeah.
anything.
mm,
We didn't tackle any real issues. Just don't be a nihilist who kills for chaos reasons. And believe in yourself and that you should not be a nihilist and that nihilism is bad and you should care about the other people and people around you and yeah,
Don't
I
be a
don't know.
serial killer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't be a serial killer, folks. So who would I recommend this for? If you want to, if you want a fun comic, if you want a stakes that aren't really gonna be super dramatic, something that's not gonna make you feel sad at the end of it, really. which some Spider-Man stories do. And yes, it's like it's very popcorn. Again, you could. I'm gonna correct myself. I feel like you could see what Jean-Claude Van Damme as Spider-Man, and I'm gonna say Steven Seagal would be more of the Venom character, maybe. I don't know. He might argue with you that he can't be an anti-hero. He's got to be a full hero. I don't know.
Oh,
My
yeah,
what's
Van
the calling
Damme you're
hard is
talking
not great.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Van Damme. I feel like Van Damme may be better for Spider-Man, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
the
yeah,
slick hair. That's Seagal, it's not helping him. That's just generally slightly more evil than a bald person, I think.
yeah. That's more of the the Venom style there.
Yeah.
I mean, who would you recommend this for?
Um, I mean, yeah, I guess it's still just with the actiony style. I would say it's, I don't know, a younger, audience overall. Maybe, yeah, late teenager, early 20s. Maybe I guess that's something like that. It's just action, action for the sake of it. It's something. So yeah, overall, overall, we're checking out in those groups.
All right. So I'm gonna throw it to you. I'm gonna have you do your rating first. But first, a quick reminder: we don't have a physical board yet. We will at some point, or we may do it digitally. We'll decide. It's still early.
Right.
We're still working out the kinks. If you don't enjoy these videos, then that's great. Uh,
But yeah, no, we could
but
have our previous ratings, yeah, up on here on the
yeah,
screen
yeah, we'll have the
somewhere.
previous ratings. We'll have I really I want to have it physical. I think would be best, but we'll see what we can come up with. Maybe old school Top Gear style. If you guys ever watch that. But
Right. We have to.
quick reminder: there's only been two rated so far. So right now, top of the list is the Marvels. We both rated, I believe, at an 8.5. And then Daredevil Born Again, we had at 7.5 out of 10. I do try to be a little bit harsh on some of these ratings because I know we're gonna cover a lot of stories,
Mhm.
and I want it to be the separations to make sense. So Gavin, I'm gonna let you
Started
go.
out. All right. Yes, I am ready because yeah, I mean feel like I thought a good amount on it, and I'm just gonna go ahead and give this one an even 7.0 for me. So so yeah, that's where it ranked again. Yeah, if we talked about the last one, yeah, Daredevil being all right to 7. This one being yeah, basic C, right? That's a rating, like still, worth watching. I mean, worth reading. I mean, all the effort put into it. I feel like it's still, yeah, got a lot of those characters, but that's where I put it. I feel like you're gonna be lower if you're saying you were harsher.
Well, and that's the thing. I think honestly that the fact that I finished reading this about a week ago, I had it as a 7, and it did not it didn't age very well. So I am gonna put it down at 6.5. So that's gonna put it, I think, with our first kind of
Hmm.
real split rating here. Um, so that's gonna put it here to 6.75. And honestly, what I'm gonna say about it is if I go into the theater this week and that movie is not better than this comic book, I'm gonna be disappointed. Um, and again, that's not something that I that's not something that I personally feel like happens super often. Like generally, I prefer the comic when it comes to a lot of things. They're able to do more. They're able to put more substance in there in some ways than some of the movies do. Particularly, the MCU does a good job of being a really good movie without it's just not as deep as most Marvel stuff. But if there's, I hope it does. I hope the new movie, I hope Venom 2 does the action a bit more. I think if it can match the action of this story, and explore a little bit more of actual like character motivations, just any character motivations. I think you're gonna be in for a fun movie and something that I hope is enjoyable and sticks around. And I don't know about you, I will watch Woody Harrelson in just about anything. This is a
Right.
totally different role from what I usually have watched Woody Harrelson in, but
Mhm.
I'm excited to see what that looks like. And I enjoyed the first movie. It wasn't the best movie of all time, but I would say that first movie is probably at least a 7 in my mind. So
For sure. I
yeah,
I think
fingers crossed.
yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to. Yeah, I mean, seeing new characters in any Spider-Man is kind of was when there's gonna be more movies coming too. It's like the beginning of the Tobey Maguire arc that's a lot of people in our generation would be used to. You're looking forward to what that could be, and if you like those actors, yeah, I do recognize some of them from other things I've watched. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think Tom Hardy having a little bit more creative controls be interesting. And then, like you said, this is opening up the Sony Spider-Man villain verse, and the buzz is that is there going to be a connection to MCU and the MCU Spider-Man? Is the new Spider-Man movie later this year going to have the old Spider-Man in it? This is going to be that first reveal. I heard some. I haven't read. I didn't read because I wanted to avoid spoilers, but I've heard that you have to stick around for the post credit scene because it is
Of
there's something
course.
there's some major stuff there. So I I could guess what that is, but I'm gonna leave it open. And yeah, hopefully, if you have seen the movie, hopefully you do see some connections here. Maybe you decide to pick up this comic book on Marvel Unlimited or wherever you get your comics. And if you don't enjoy the movie, or if you decide that after listening to us talk about it, this isn't the comic for you, then good. We'll have more episodes. Check out some of the other ones, and we'll see what we can come up with some other recommendations for you. So
Perfect.
with that in mind, Gavin, you want to lead us out with the traditional YouTube like and subscribe and all of that fun stuff?
Absolutely. It's been fun making this one. Thanks everyone for watching. Yeah, especially if you're tuning in all the way through the video now. So please don't forget to like and subscribe below. It definitely helps out the channel. All that. So thanks for watching. Again, yes, I'm Gavin, and I'll let you.
Andrew, and at some point we will get more social media out there. There we'll get us Twitter going, possibly Instagram, a lot of other stuff in the works. We'll see how it turns out. So again, thank you everybody, and see you next time.